Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the show. Let's rip into some sucks of the Fantasy Football 2021 Week 11 week and also praise some of the guys like Jonathan Taylor, who had a phenomenal Fantasy Football week. And I got to eat some humble pie, but Austin Ekeler proving me wrong this year. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Again, the studs and sucks for Fantasy Football Week 11, NFL Week 11, highlights, recap, going to cover it right here, right now. Before we get into the show, guys, head over to manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLION. Save yourself 20% on some amazing products. Christmas is around the corner, guys. This is the Lawnmower 3.0 right here. Got the Lawnmower 4.0 behind me. They've got amazing products. I've been using their shampoo and body wash. Amazing product. Smells nice, smells manly, smells clean, smells fresh. Try their body wash. I recommend it. Get yourself a trimmer. Manscaped.com. Promo code SHOWERLION. All right, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys do hit that thumbs up below and comment below who was the guy that sucked for you this week. Who was the guy that did really well for you this week? Want to hear your success stories. I know 16 rounders DM me all the time on Insta, and they say to me, well, Joe, I'm crushing it. Thanks for 16 rounds. I want to hear your success stories in the comments below as well. Your trials, your tribulations, your highs and your lows. Let's talk about it in the comments. All right, guys? So studs and sucks here. Let's go through every position. Let's just talk about some highlights, some scores, it was a crazy week. Looking at the scoreboard, there were some upsets. So let's talk a little bit about that here right now. And the big one for me, and I was torn between in one league, and I may have cost myself the week. Sometimes you don't want to always start the best matchup. You start your best player. So I was torn between Tannehill, who got me 16 points, and Justin Herbert, who actually had himself a great game. So I ended up, making a huge mistake and actually starting Tannehill in that league. And again, if you look at the matchup, okay, Tannehill was playing Houston. I understand Pittsburgh's defense was banged up, and I could have went Herbert, and I should have went Herbert. That's hindsight. But it was an optimal matchup for Tennessee, one of the hottest teams in football, to play Houston, and Houston beat them 22-13. So when we're talking about scores, that's a huge upset, okay? Let's talk about Raiders here real quick. Derek Carr, they lost to the Bengals, and Derek Carr, a guy that has years to wow, and I'm not wowed. Everyone's like, yeah, he's MVP, he's the best. Dude, he's lost 3 weeks in a row. He's looking terrible, okay? Great matchup on Sunday night, which was Pittsburgh and the Chargers. I got to talk about that matchup. The Chargers, 41-37, win the game, but that came down to the wire there. Kind of an anticlimactic ending there with Big Ben on that last opportunity to win the game, but overall, great game to watch. And again, the Minnesota-Green Bay game, that was good. Minnesota 34-31. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Oh, and the Colts upsetting the Buffalo Bills. Not just beating them by a field goal, but beating them 41-15. Josh Allen throwing 3 or 4 picks. It was insane. So there were some good matchups. It was a thoroughly entertaining night. Tonight we've got the Giants and the Buccaneers. I'm not too excited other than to see maybe a return of Saquon Barkley. But when you're looking at NFL Week 11 highlights, that upset with the Colts, my Colts, yeah, let's go, 41 points on the Buffalo Bills. Very, very impressive. So when we're looking at studs and sucks here this week, let's rip into some guys here. But for the most part, most people kind of played where they needed to be. Everybody kind of performed where they needed to be. The only kind of, big, problem was with quarterbacks. Now let's take a look at some quarterbacks that actually sucked and crapped the bed in Week 11. One of them being Dak Prescott. Very, very disappointing. 216 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. We saw CeeDee Lamb go down with a concussion, fell back. I saw that. A lot of impact on the skull. He may miss the next game. But 2.64 fantasy points for Dak Prescott, a guy a lot of people started. Pat Mahomes, 1 interception, 0 touchdowns, 7.5 points. Very, very embarrassing for Patrick Mahomes, a guy that was first quarterback off the board pretty much this year. Told you always do not invest a second-round pick on a quarterback. Sure enough, he's had some bust games. This was one of them, 7.5 points. And Russell Wilson, I don't know what's happened since he's come back, but the past 2 weeks, just not looking good at all. Russell Wilson absolutely crapping the bed this week. 8.4, just under 9 points, 8.48. Just despicable when it's a guy that's been Mr. Consistent at the quarterback position for years, okay? And then again, Justin Fields had a crappy game. Not a lot of people start him. And, what you see is what you get. Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence, bad games. Joe Burrow, under 10 points. Ryan Tannehill, 9 points. In the particular league, I had quarterbacks were way a little heavier, so I ended up getting 16 out of Ryan Tannehill. Carson Wentz even had a mediocre game of 10 points, okay? Guys that crushed it. Justin Herbert crushed it. Yes, I know. I had him on my bench in one league. I know. 34 points. Aaron Rodgers, 33 points. Jalen Hurts. Looks like the Eagles are coming alive. They've had a couple of good games. 30 points there for Jalen Hurts. Cam Newton having himself a good campaign with 26. Kirk Cousins, Trevor Siemian, Taylor Heineke, Colt McCoy, believe it or not, Ben Roethlisberger, and Tyrod Taylor rounded the top 10 in regards to Sunday's game. But again, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Cam Newton, top 4. Great performances, okay? Moving to the running back position, and this is insane, but Jonathan Taylor, 185 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per carry, 3 receptions, 19 yards, and additional touchdowns. So 5 touchdowns total, 4 on the ground, 1 receiving for an accumulation of 53.4 PPR fantasy points. Absolutely insane. Jonathan Taylor was a guy that I recommended in my 16-round draft solution in the first round. And, I definitely saw the ceiling, and I said I recommend him in the first round, but he's one of those guys that came with a lot of uncertainty, high ceiling if he gets a start, and he's the main guy. Yes, there was Hines, there was Mack, there's other people there, and I said that maybe it might be a committee, but he was the guy that ran away with it at the end of the season. And I find that with running backs, going back to David Johnson in 2015, he ran away with it, became huge in 2016. Derrick Henry, a year or two after, near the end of the season, was turning it up, picked up on that, tore it up. Taylor, again, last year, now in 2021, boomed, right? Came alive in 2020. So it seems to be a trend where these guys emerge near the end of the season and then take over the season after. So it's very interesting. Very happy for Jonathan Taylor and the Colts. They've got an amazing workhorse running back who had 32 attempts yesterday. Just absolutely amazing. Austin Eckler, I got to eat crow here. Austin Eckler, 41 points. Absolutely looked amazing. 2 touchdowns there, 2 receiving, 2 rushing, got a lot of work. The guy plays with a lot of heart. And one thing I didn't know about him prior to the debacle with Eckler, and that's when I said that he sucked last year before going into the season. He came onto my social media, said he didn't suck. He said he's a guy that can get it done, and then ended up busting due to injury and all that stuff. Called him a bust. He ended up blocking me. And then I realized he actually does care about the fantasy community. He's actually doing really well in fantasy. So apparently he's a really nice guy. So if you guys do talk to Austin Eckler in his Instagram, make sure you tag him, tell him to unblock the counselor. But I really appreciate what he does for the fantasy football community and what he's doing for fantasy points. So 41.5 points. Glad I didn't play against him in my leagues yesterday, but great performance. Christian McCaffrey, he's done nothing this year, but when he does play, he gets it done. 24.9 points, coming in number 3. And Joe Mixon, a surprise. Years to us were not wowed. Showing up this year, okay? Putting up 24.5 points. 24.3 points yesterday, okay? McCaffrey was 24.9. Swift, great running back. The opportunity seems to be there with the Lions. Doing great. Dalvin Cook having him a good game. Nick Chubb, James Conner, Devontae Freeman, Myles Gaskin. A lot of volatility with certain players where they don't end up on top every single week in the top 10 anyway. Dalvin Cook's been up and down. Nick Chubb. A lot of uncertainty with some of these guys, but they turned out and had himself a good matchup. Now, a good turnout for fantasy points. Najee Harris finished 11th according to Sunday's game, around 17 points. Now, Najee Harris went out with an injury. I don't know if you guys saw that. I guess he ran, ended up kind of in the air, got hit in the head. And again, there's nothing he could have prevented because he was mid-air or whatever. He was kind of in motion. He got hit in momentum of taking that hit, absorbing that hit, takes another hit, and then kind of was shaken up. His trainers came out, and you could see Najee Harris obviously was upset, pushed one of the trainers off, like, leave me alone, I'm good. Ended up going to the sidelines and then came back in the game near the end of the game. Had a mediocre game, but he's been relatively consistent throughout the entire season. Okay, so Najee Harris, a guy consistent, didn't have the greatest game yesterday. But when you're talking about guys that sucked this past week at the running back position, I got to go with David Montgomery, 7.7 points. Antonio Gibson, who sucked the entire season, 7.5 points. Miles Sanders, who came back, 7.4 points. Jeff Wilson, with Elijah Mitchell being down, should have emerged. Only 6.8 points for Elijah Mitchell. Those guys off the top of my head could have done a lot better, and they didn't. And that's very, very disappointing. But for the most part, what you see is what you got from all running backs this week. Michael Carter could have had a better game, 7.4 points as well. Josh Jacobs disappointing at 11.1. James Robinson, 11.8. Zeke Elliott, 12.8. So some mediocre performances from some top names, but no one really busted other than the guys that I mentioned, like Jeff Wilson, Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery. Could have done a lot better than what they actually did. Wide receivers here, the guys that kind of crapped the bed. A.J. Brown, 9.8 points, very disappointing. Michael Gallup, 9.4 points. Hunter Renfrow, guy has been consistent almost every week, 7.5 points. Michael Pittman's 4.3 points. And those are the guys that stand out to me. In the comments, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, comment, let me know who kind of stood out for you that busted. And again, those guys are kind of the biggest names that I saw. Robbie Anderson, only 8 points. I thought that he'd have a better game with Newton. But kind of what you see is what you get here with wide receivers. Jamar Chase, 13 points, very safe game. And then again, the guys that did well, Justin Jefferson, 37 points, amazing, emerging as the one there. Devontae Adams, Elijah Moore, guy that told you to stash, crushed it, 29 points. Darnell Mooney, 23 points, had both those guys on my lineup, okay? Adam Thielen, 22.2 points, pretty good. Marquise Valdes-Scantling had a big game, only because that big bomb touchdown, right? That big touchdown throw. So he did really well. Marquise Valdes-Scantling had himself a game. But again, don't expect that every week. Brandon Ayuk finished in the top 10 with 21 points. He had himself a good game. Terry McLaurin and Mike Williams coming back, putting up 20 points. But again, very volatile, like Ayuk, Mike Williams, very volatile receivers. Great for DFS plays, but very uncertain when you start plugging them in every single week. Deontay Johnson finished fourth. Very, very consistent. Love my Deontay. Moving on to tight end here, guys. With tight end, again, the busts, there wasn't really any huge busts. CJ Uzomah, 2.9 points. TJ Hawkins, 11.1. But tight ends kind of performed where they should. The guys that had mediocre performances, like Pat Freiermuth, 11 points, right? People want that high ceiling, but Pat Freiermuth still put up 10 points. And I'm happy with 10 points. Gesicki, 10 points. Nothing to get excited about, right? Jared Cook had an okay game, 5.8, a mediocre game, but no one's expecting anything out of him. The bust of the week has to be Kyle Pitts with 5.9 points. Way more expectations out of him, just not performing where he should be. And again, Zach Ertz, good number one tight end, good week. Travis Kelce, where you expect him, 18 points. Darren Waller, 18 points. Adam Troutman had a good game with 16, and then Mark Andrews. So again, guys, the guys that should be on top typically are the guys that also are expecting to be on top, like Hawkins and Gesicki, had mediocre games, and Kyle Pitts kind of the big bust there at the tight end position. So, when you're looking at studs and sucks, guys, no one player is going to be consistent every week. You get certain players like Najee, Eckler, Deontay Johnson. There's, Kelsey's been pretty consistent. You only have like a handful of guys that perform every single week consistently where you get that 15 to 25 points out of them. But typically you get a lot of volatility, and this is happening a lot in this year, particularly with the wide receiver position. And again, at quarterback this week, very disappointed with guys like Dak and Russell Wilson, who could have had themselves a better game, but just not performing where they should be performing. All right, guys? So if you guys are going into week 12, I will be covering all the starts and sits, everything you guys need, DFS for week 12. If you're new to the channel, I know a lot of people watch the channel but haven't subscribed. Hit that subscribe button, help the channel out. Okay, guys, thumbs up and comment below who was the stud and suck for you guys this past week. Love to get your feedback, okay? We go year-round. We are full flow season this year. Let's get some wins. Subscribe, and then we'll talk soon, guys. Appreciate you. I'm out.